On this Monday night, Canadians told to brace for a wildfire season. As Nova Scotia gets some relief, parts of BC are in danger, and an entire village in Quebec is decimated.
The fire was too strong.
The calls for a national approach to extinguish these flames. The backlash against Paul Bernardo's prison transfer.
Canadians are entitled to an explanation.
The push to get one of Canada's most notorious murderers back in maximum security. Housing construction complications, the need for more homes, and the solution in our backyards. And new gadget in sight.
Your surroundings become an infinite canvas.
Apple's gamble as it amps up its augmented reality.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with grim projections about what is already the worst spring wildfire season in Canadian history. It is expected to get worse over the summer, raising questions about whether Canada has the resources to fight all the fires. Here is the picture right now. 413 fires are burning and 26,000 people have been forced from their homes. Fire crews are doing what they can to get the upper hand. This is a planned ignition at the Donny Creek wildfire in northeastern BC. Crews on the ground and in a chopper using a helitorch are deliberately starting fires to create a perimeter around a larger wildfire in order to contain it. In Ontario, this fire started last night about an hour west of Ottawa, forcing more people from their homes. Because it's warm and dry in so many parts of the country, it's projected Canada is on track for the worst ever year of wildfire destruction. We have complete coverage tonight, beginning with Mike Armstrong.
This is the weather most of the country needs. The rain that's fallen in recent days in Nova Scotia has helped crews bring every fire but one under control. At the peak a week ago, 16,000 people were hit with forced evacuations. About 2/3 have now been allowed to go home.
Pretty weird. Everything smelled pretty smoky. I guess we had forgotten a couple windows open, so it smelled pretty bad in the house.
Now in Quebec, the number of evacuations is still growing. 14,000 people have been forced out as fires threaten several communities. There are 154 fires burning, 111 are out of control. The Premier Monday said the province only has enough equipment to fight about 30 fires. It would normally request help from other provinces. Unfortunately, he says they have their own problems. Now, while it's early in the season, a massive amount of terrain in Quebec has already been affected. The average for the last 10 years at this point is 257 hectares burned. Quebec is now already at more than 160,000 hectares. One place basically wiped out, according to the Premier, is the small village of Clova in northern Quebec.
Yeah, it's a small municipality, 36 people. Unfortunately, we weren't able to save the municipality, so the fire was too strong.
The smoke from the Quebec fires is moving south. This was the haze over Ottawa Monday. Health authorities are warning the smoky air can be dangerous for people with underlying conditions. Ontario is dealing with its own evacuations. A wildfire that started Sunday about 150 kilometers west of Ottawa is burning out of control. Now, there is international help in Canada. This is a group of South African firefighters that arrived in Alberta over the weekend. There are close to 1,000 international firefighters and related personnel from the US, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. About 200 more will arrive this week. Well, there will be work for them. BC is dealing with 83 wildfires. About 20 are out of control. There is little rain in the forecast, and the last significant rainfall for the province was a full month ago. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Halifax.
It is impossible to ignore all this because so many places are vulnerable in Canada, not just stretches of uninhabited forest. Do we have the capacity to deal with what's coming? Eric Sorensen is looking into that tonight.
Canada, with its vast forests and grasslands at a latitude that is warming quickly from climate change, is facing among the greatest risks for wildfires, and it's getting Ottawa's attention very early this year.
This is a scary time. Our modeling shows that this may be an especially severe wildfire season throughout the summer.
The Prime Minister says Ottawa is coordinating with provinces, training more community-based firefighters, and partnering with Indigenous communities. But experts say Canada's patchwork of jurisdictional response needs improvement.
We have different levels of government in Canada taking various levels of responsibility. We do need to have a national approach to this that is consistent, because these fires not only affect a province, but they cross borders between provinces.
Canada features prominently by every wildfire measurement, along with Russia, Central Africa, and the Amazon. This is the annual intensity of wildfires. Here's the average annual burned area from wildfires. And the expected burned area by country. Russia and Canada are 1 and 2, facing the highest risk of wildfires. Canada's greatest fire danger right now is in the west, BC, Alberta, the Northwest Territories, and in the east, Ontario and Quebec. Nova Scotia has finally had some rain, but it's been a remarkable year already. Wildland fires consume an average of 2.5 million hectares annually. This year, more than 2.7 million hectares burned by the end of May, 12 times more than average this early in the season. As fires increasingly threaten both forests and communities, more will need to be done to coordinate training and response among urban and wildland firefighters.
It is an emerging area. It is something we are very live to. It is something that provinces and territories, I think, are increasingly aware of.
One expert suggests Canada needs a national squadron of firefighting bombers and crews that can be deployed. The Prime Minister acknowledged governments must do more to adapt to the increasing impacts from climate change.
More difficult and devastating wildfires, more intense hurricanes and storms. We are going to need to continue to step up in our support for Canadians.
It's starting off as one of Canada's worst wildfire seasons, and the longest days and the summer heat are still ahead. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
The Correctional Service of Canada says it will conduct a review of the decision to transfer notorious killer and serial rapist Paul Bernardo to a medium security facility. Commissioner Ann Kelly says the review will check his security classification to ensure the move is appropriate and adequately considers the victims. It's unclear why Bernardo was transferred. He's serving a life sentence for kidnapping, torturing, and murdering teenagers Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey in the 1990s. Canada's Public Safety Minister calls the move incomprehensible, but says his office cannot overrule it.
Canadians find this shocking, given the heinous nature of the crimes that he committed against women and girls repeatedly, which is why it is important that she signaled to me that she would be reviewing the decision.
A lawyer for the victim's family says the decision is devastating and that Bernardo's dangerous offender status makes the move puzzling. The Correctional Service of Canada has not explained this decision. It says it can place inmates in higher security prisons at any point if deemed necessary to ensure the safety of the public and institutions. Now to that close encounter between a Chinese warship and an American destroyer in the Taiwan Strait. China has ramped up its presence in the disputed East China Sea to conduct what it says are normal patrols. The region is claimed by both China and Japan and has long been a point of contention. Canada's HMCS Montreal is there too, and our Mackenzie Gray is on board.
It's the strongest show of force we've seen on our trip so far. Canadian, Japanese, Australian, and American ships all together flying the flag in the East China Sea. Canadian refueling ship MV Asterix leading the formation as helicopters buzz over top, taking pictures of the ships.
Shows our interoperability, our capabilities together, and the fact that we're willing to work together as separate nations as one group.
Photobombing in the background, 3 Chinese warships.
Their presence was there, but not an impact, not impediment to what we were doing.
But 2 days ago on the Taiwan Strait, their impact was significant. The Chinese warship cutting off USS Changhoon. The American Navy releasing new video showing the ships coming within 150 yards of colliding.
You don't ever want to be that close to another vessel because too many things can go wrong and you can actually have a collision.
That Chinese ship, a part of the world's largest navy, estimated to have 340 warships, recently surpassing the U.S. and dwarfing the 30 ships the Canadian Navy has. The Chinese buildup and other military drills has the West concerned about a potential invasion of Taiwan across the very waters that Montreal sailed just 2 days ago. Beijing views the democratically governed island as a breakaway territory, and despite the Chinese Communist Party never controlling Taiwan, the Pentagon believes President Xi Jinping could order an attack as soon as 2027.
So I would argue that China is already engaged in a war. It's engaged in a cyber attack war.
This is how China and Taiwan appear on most maps, but this is how the CCP sees the region that we're sailing through right now. Taiwan is a linchpin in what Beijing calls the First Island Chain, a constellation of Western allies that cover the entire Chinese coast. But controlling Taiwan would give Beijing direct access to the Pacific and to the shipping lanes where nearly 50% of global trade is transported.
Any blockage of that, any disruption to the free flow of maritime transportation would be incredibly disruptive to the global economy, and China has a big edge in controlling that.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said on 4 occasions the Americans would defend Taiwan from a Chinese attack, but the Canadian defense minister was less clear.
Canada respects the one China policy. We are concerned, however, by China's military activity in the vicinity of Taiwan, and we urge China to resolve differences through peaceful means.
The Montreal is scheduled to head to port in Okinawa later today, and that's where we'll be getting off the boat and heading home. But Donna, for many of the sailors on the Montreal, they won't be able to say that until their deployment's done in October.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray near Okinawa, Japan. Thanks, Mackenzie. The Russian government has released video suggesting Ukraine's much-anticipated counter-offensive may have begun. Russia claims it foiled an assault and claims to have killed up to 300 Ukrainians, destroying more than 50 military vehicles in the Donetsk region. Ukraine says it has no information about a large-scale attack. There is an information war as well as a real war underway. President Volodymyr Zelensky insists his troops are ready to recapture occupied territory. As Redmond Shannon reports, it appears Ukrainian soldiers are now making gains near the destroyed city of Bakhmut.
For Ukraine, silence is golden. This ad asks citizens not to post on social media if they see or hear about military movements in advance of its counteroffensive. But that offensive may already be underway. The Kremlin posted this video claiming the operation started in failure Sunday, with up to 300 Ukrainians killed as they attempted an attack. Kyiv cryptically said it doesn't comment on fakes. It's unknown when the videos were taken, but they do appear to be from locations where some experts predicted an offensive. Near the southeastern corner of the front line, where Ukraine could be aiming to punch through and split Russian-occupied territory in two.
As Ministry of Defense, I think, stated yesterday, there will be no announcement.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba very much on message by saying little, but one clue could lie elsewhere on the front line. Russia's cantankerous mercenary boss Yevgeny Prigozhin says Ukraine has regained land near the destroyed city of Bakhmut. A win later lauded by President Volodymyr Zelensky.
At this moment, both Moscow and Kyiv do have incentives to spread a bit of disinformation, to confuse the information space and confuse each other.
Unverified claims from anti-Putin Russian opposition groups of another incursion into Russia only add to that confusion, as Moscow defends a 1,500-kilometre front line and Kyiv looks for weak spots.
And so they're going to have to choose, I would think, 1, 2, maybe 3 places where they concentrate that force.
If the offensive has begun on this, the week of the anniversary of D-Day, it could be a series of small yet brutal steps rather than one symbolic moment. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Which Canadian airline gets the most complaints? We'll tell you coming up. Plus, homes needed, the challenges for construction companies, and a potential solution. Complaints about air travel in Canada are not unusual these days, and according to new federal data, that's especially true when it comes to Flair Airlines. The Canadian Transport Agency received complaints about more than 20% of Flair flights during the first quarter of 2023, by far the worst figure among Canadian carriers. The numbers were about 11% of WestJet flights and 6% of Air Canada flights over the same time period. Flair has been criticized for poor customer service, last-minute cancellations, and in some cases taking passengers to different airports than their original destination. Well, it's widely expected the Bank of Canada will hike interest rates again this week, and that will put more pressure on Canadians struggling to afford housing. Industry experts warn the need for affordable housing is quickly outpacing possible solutions. Mike Drolet looks at one idea that can be found right in our backyards.
No matter how fast these homes go up, there's a very real possibility it won't be fast enough to meet demand.
We have a plan to double home building over the next decade for people at all income levels.
The federal government has put a number on what is needed: 2.5 million homes built over the next decade. Put another way, that's a finished home every 2 minutes. What are the chances the construction industry thinks it can pull it off?
Yeah, zero.
No chance at all.
No chance at all. If you took all the construction workers across Canada, landscape, everything like that, they'd all have to come to Ontario just to meet Ontario's goal.
Complicating matters, 3 levels of government that have to be in sync. Ontario, for one, tried to spur on the construction industry by waiving development charges for builders. Municipalities aren't happy because they need those fees to build sewers and roads.
One tier of government is saying you can't build here. Then you are NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Then you have councillors who are NIMTOs, not in my term of office. Then you have the crazies called bananas, build absolute nothing anywhere near anything.
With all those issues at play, Guelph, Ontario startup Packed Homes is pushing another option. They're called ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. Smaller homes built on existing properties, most often for relatives or rental units. Where a traditional home can take up to 2 years to build, ADUs can be erected in as little as 5 weeks because everything is prefabricated. Packed Homes offers a 585 square foot unit for $235,000.
Do you think this is the game changer? I do. I think it's the Tesla of house building.
They've become hugely popular in San Francisco, as well as in Toronto and Vancouver alleyways. So why haven't we seen more of them built? Well, just like every other suggestion to address the housing crisis, not everyone wants them in their neighbor's backyard. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Student satellites ahead, the Canadian cargo on its way to the International Space Station.
Go Falcon, go Dragon.
This is the latest cargo mission from SpaceX taking off for the International Space Station. And among the 3,000 plus kilograms of supplies and provisions are Canadian-made CubeSats. They're mini cube-shaped satellites that Canadian university students built and designed over the last 5 years. They're about the size of a Rubik's Cube and will each perform a different mission lasting about a year. They'll study things like climate change, weather, and radiation. In Virginia, no survivors were found at the crash site of a small plane that flew into restricted airspace near Washington, D.C. 2 F-16s were scrambled to intercept the plane Sunday afternoon, triggering a sonic boom over the city. Military pilots tried to contact the Cessna multiple times and set off flares, but determined the pilot was incapacitated. The fighter jets stayed with the civilian aircraft until it crashed in a remote mountainous area. 4 people were on board. Federal investigators are now trying to figure out what happened. Prince Harry was a no-show for his highly anticipated phone hacking lawsuit in the UK today. Harry was expected in court for the first day of his case against the publisher of the Daily Mirror tabloid. He claims the paper invaded his privacy by hacking his cell phone. Lawyers for the publisher say there's no evidence his phone was hacked. The Duke of Sussex is scheduled to take the stand tomorrow. Virtual vision next, Apple's expensive endeavor into augmented reality.
When you first put on Vision Pro, you see your space and everything in it. There's something truly extraordinary about seeing your favorite apps and experiences right there in the room with you.
Apple has unveiled its much-anticipated augmented reality headset. It's not the first player in the game, and Apple is banking on a sector that is struggling. Things don't come cheap at Apple. A headset will cost nearly $5,000 Canadian. The question is, will enough consumers buy it? Jeff Semple reports.
The company that built its trillion-dollar brand by producing game-changing technology announced its first new product in a decade.
Introducing Apple Vision Pro.
Apple's mixed reality headset, unveiled at the company's annual developers conference, blends the real world with the digital.
This marks the beginning of a journey that will bring a new dimension to powerful personal technology.
The headset marks Apple's first foray into virtual and augmented reality, but the technology, which produces a 3D interactive environment, has been around for years, used for everything from video games to training astronauts to travel into space, even soldiers to fight in Ukraine. I'll try not to hit you or anything right there. Global News recently visited this startup in Kyiv that's piloting VR tech to train Ukrainians to fire mortars.
It's a learning process. It's a process of experiencing something.
But despite its many successes, VR has so far failed to live up to the hype.
So I think it has a lot of potential.
This VR researcher says the technology is still buggy, and there aren't a lot of real-world applications.
And so we've gotten really far. It's just there's a ways to go.
Since releasing the iPod back in 2001, Apple has created an entire ecosystem of products that, whether you like it or not, have become ubiquitous. But for some analysts who were expecting the next big leap, the headset is a bit of a head-scratcher. Tech giants Google, Meta, and Microsoft have all tried and failed, in some cases spectacularly, to turn VR into a money-making reality.
There we go.
This industry analyst spoke to us over Zoom using his VR headset, which produces an avatar.
Good-looking avatar you've got there.
I made myself a little bit slimmer.
He imagines a not-too-distant future where these headsets will allow people to appear physically in a room together, meeting, playing, and collaborating.
When Apple comes into a market, it really pushes the boundaries. It makes things cool, and it really creates some consumer buzz.
He says Apple's first headset is just the beginning. Analysts say the device, with its eye-watering price tag, is too expensive and impractical, though that's also what they said about the first iPhone. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
I don't want to talk to an avatar. That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada. Is this Canada Goose and her goslings chilling in Edmonton? We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.